Okay, well, welcome everyone. Today we are very fortunate to have Don Simpson, and he's going to talk about your life's real work through an inspired conversation and how to get ready for it. Before we begin, we'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. So, and as this is a hybrid event and some participants are on different territories, we ask that you please take time and space to give thanks and gratitude and respect for the land that you're currently living and working in. So today we're here at York University in Toronto, and it's situated on the traditional territorial area known as Toronto, and we acknowledge its current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We also acknowledge this as traditional territory of many Indigenous nations, including the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis. This territory is also subject to the Dish with One Spoon Waffle Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. So our moderator today is going to be Harvey Skinner, and just a couple of words that Harvey is Professor Emeritus of Psychology and Global Health here at York. He is a senior fellow at the Dahdaleh Institute for Global Health Research. He's the chair of our membership committee, and he was the founding dean of York University's Faculty of Health from 2006 to 16. Harvey is placed in the top 2% world scientists by the Stanford University World Wildlife Analysis with respect to research citations and impact metrics. Currently, Harvey co-leads the Wellness Impact Lab at the Dahdaleh Institute with Susan Harris. And at a personal level, Harvey maintains a daily wellness practice of mindfulness meditation. His passion is healing ourselves, healing our world. So over to you, Harvey.
Thank you, Mary. I thought I would set the scene. It's a sunny but cold winter's day, but Don and I are sitting in two nice big cushy chairs with some beautiful friends and colleagues around us. There's a crackling wood fire over in the corner, and we're situated in this lodge, some very peaceful area on our planet. So let's just visualize that context. And Don and I are going to have a conversation. But as a preamble, Don, what would you like to accomplish with this conversation?
Well, first of all, I want to acknowledge publicly I'm telling the story of what I call the creation of the Renaissance Way. And here is one of my Renaissance pathfinders sitting right beside me. And I'm proud to see the recognition again given to Harvey this week in your university newsletter, if you haven't read it. But what would I like to accomplish? This is my, although I've been hanging around here for the last couple of years at James's invitation, it's my first opportunity to get to know you. And so I want to set an environment that makes you relax. I would want us to have some fun together. And I would invite you all to see if we could offer to each other what I call a gift of trust. And if we gave each other that gift of trust, it would then probably open up some frank conversation that could make a difference. Because I would like, when you take time in your busy life to come to a gathering like this with a strange interloper, that it should be important for you. And so I would like January 29th, 2025 to go down in your books as a life marker. One of those big events that happens at different times in your life and helps to shape what you're going to do with your life. So I have a hope that enough excitement happens among us and between us that you, or at least some of you, might remember this day as a life marker. And in order to dramatically get your attention, I want to say that I'm here to invite you to join a revolution. And I'm not trying to instigate a revolution that embeds violence or military action, but I am making a strong plea for a revolution in our thinking about our own abilities and our responsibilities. And it seems to me that in troubling times, like we are now in during the year of the snake, any of us who would like to position ourselves as progressives, I feel the maintenance of your spirit of optimism in this period, it should become your duty and not just a casual indulgence. So I want to try to have a conversation with you about ways in which we can find the courage to retain a spirit of informed optimism in these troubling times. And the last thing I would like to accomplish is to remind you, at least some of you who've been here for the last 2 years, about a big challenge that your former director, James, gave to you twice in events that I've attended here. And some of you may remember he twice has talked about how proud he is of the research that the group has been doing at the Institute. And he was applauding success and urging you to retain that success. But he made a plea that the new focus for your next 5 years. I'm looking to see if anybody's saying, oh yeah, I remember what he said. He challenged you to learn how to be successful storytellers. And I wonder how many have gone back to him or spent time yourself saying, why would James want us to be successful storytellers? And he realizes that storytelling is our primal mode of communication. And it's the power that triggers our imagination and gives us a chance to have self-discovery. And we know that if we're trying to influence people to use the research that we're producing, he's saying you better become a good storyteller. So I'm here to offer some suggestions of how you might become better storytellers. And I want you to know I'm asking for your help in assisting me to become a better storyteller. Because what I have taken on just this month is my new role for what I think is going to be the rest of my days on this planet. I want to be an ambassador of rational, informed optimism and a promoter inviting you to consider becoming a modern day Renaissance leader. So let me start with a story. Once upon a time, there was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy. They say he wandered very far over land and sea, a little shy and sad of eye, but very wise was he. And then one magic day, he came my way. And while we spoke of many things, fools and kings, this he said to me. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. So, to me, this is a story of learning that the only way to love others is by learning to love yourself. And it's a story about discovering that in the search for identity and purpose, the answer is only made possible when we start to use love as a verb rather than just as a noun. And finally, it's a story of exploring that love that is expressed through a life of service to others promotes personal happiness. And so this is part of the story I want to share with you. And I'm inviting you to join me on some snapshots of my journey that led me to the position of where I think I'm finally now undertaking my real life's purpose, which is to spread the challenge of modern day Renaissance leadership and encourage people to remain rational, informed optimists. Harvey, thank you for giving me that good space to get some deep thinking off my heart.
Well, Don, you've been my coach. I know my 10 years as dean coming to York with a big idea, but it's only a big idea. How do you actually make it happen? Coach Don was with me all the way along in this remarkable journey. You started telling your story, and the theme of our inspired conversation, and an inspired conversation. I'll ask Don a few questions, and we'll open it up so you know lots of time for your questions. The theme is get ready for your real life's work, and you sort of did that through a beautiful song, but how did you discover it?
Well, I'm not one of those people that are lucky enough to have something happen to them early in childhood. Like I have a friend who his father took him to a symphony concert at age 8, and he knew he wanted to be a French horn player. And he worked at it with great courage, and he ended up becoming a member of a good orchestra here in Canada, but he had big dreams for himself. And he and I worked together as he went to Munich, ended up in the Berlin Philharmonic. So in the 80s, I would get to visit Berlin, the divided city, and sit at the orchestra and watch von Karajan practice the orchestra, and then go to a wonderful concert, and afterwards sit with the orchestra and be totally confused as they're sitting saying, wow, we really screwed up on that second part, and I'm sitting saying the concert was marvelous. So that was my friend Fergus, the French horn player. I've never had that experience. So I've been living a long life of different roles that I realize now have been a response to different challenges that people gave me. And for some reason, I would feel moved to respond. And a couple of my artist friends who've been pushing to understand, why did you do this? What got you in this kind of life? At one point, I guess I had a smile on my face when he was asking this question, and he went, you're thinking about something now. What are you thinking about? I said, well, I'm a young high school teacher and football coach in London, Ontario. And I used to start each week putting a sign up on the board, some quote, hoping that it didn't really speak to anything in particular of the week's lessons, but I wanted the students to keep thinking as the days went by, anything we learned, does it deal with that part of life at all? And he said, what sign are you remembering? And I said, well, I remembered once putting up a sign that said for the students, if curiosity killed the cat, what a beautiful way to die. And my artist friend said, that's it. What's been driving you your whole life is your insatiable curiosity. So I can now say with some confidence that that's what's been taking me along. But I then started to realize that some of the people that I worked with had curiosity and had dreams, but didn't have the courage to try to live the dream. And then some who had the dream and the courage, but wouldn't take the time to discipline themselves to get the tools to be able to implement the dream. So what I started weaving through the different roles is, how do you learn some of those tools? And the best word I can think of that gives you an essence of the kind of life I've led, and the one with which I feel most comfortable, is the word explorer. And so I came to be known as the chief explorer. And to me, I was following these challenges and seeing where my curiosity was taking me, and somehow found the courage to follow where my curiosity was taking me. And it's taken me to some pretty wonderful places, Harvey.
You spent your life as a Renaissance leader and even articulating a Renaissance way, and you've even wrote the book, right? You just gave me the latest version of that. A key aspect of that is why not mindset? Because I know when you work with me as Coach Don, you keep pushing me, Harvey. Why not? Why not? Why not? It's relentless, challenging. And so how might our younger colleagues here use this why not mindset for advancing their careers, addressing their challenges?
Well, I think that goes to the heart of the storytelling challenge again. Some of my indigenous storytelling friends have kept telling me that the story you carry in your mind about who you really are or who you want to be is critical to your future success. And they're saying, if you keep telling yourself that story, even if people around you are saying, this is a ridiculous idea you're thinking of, the wisdom I get from my friends is, if you keep telling yourself, it will eventually start to happen. And so I'm pushing again questions about, what story are you carrying in the back of your mind about who you want to be? How do you really want to be seen by others later in life? What kind of vision do you have for success? Is it wrapped up only as a researcher, or is it much more integrated beyond that? What kind of leader do you see you might be? Or do you ever think about being a leader? Are you so focused, understandably, at the moment of getting through this graduate degree that you don't take time to talk about to yourself, about yourself as a leader? And if you're going to be a leader in a world that's been turned upside down and has presented us with a new world, a world that is highly competitive, fast changing, global, and built to an extent never before imagined on knowledge as the key asset. What are you doing to really prepare yourself to be a leader in that world? So I surprised some of my clients by saying, who's part of your GMT? And they say, GMT, what's that? Well, to me, it's your personal global mentoring team. Who's in that team? Because you need them. Do you consciously go about creating one? Would you consider creating one? And do you have a GIS? Well, GIS for me is where is your global information system? Because if you just keep yourself exposed to the public information that's around, you now know that you're living in an age where you're constantly going to be battling to know what you can believe. So shouldn't you be selecting some people or some groups that are part of your global information system, that when you want reliable knowledge, you can go to them? And so it allowed me to start talking, Harvey, with you or somebody else about a leadership approach that was not narrow and was not confined just to traditional competencies of certain kinds of leaders. So I would say the Renaissance idea that I got excited about trying to build is really a leadership that's built on a deep, profound philosophy of life, as opposed to just a host of competencies.
Don, you've had a 70-year plus career. It just keeps going. And diversity and inclusivity have always been there with you. So I think from the get-go, and you've done amazing work at Crossroads Africa and the Alberta Roundtable, mobilizing 20,000 plus people in action. But now we're in an era of real threats of polarization. And so how do we ensure that these values, diversity, inclusivity, keep central to our leadership and to our lives? As I see, it's really under some grave threat right now.
Well, it ain't easy. Which again, I go back to who's on your GMT. So I took a moment last night, and I won't give you the whole list, but I started saying, who has been part of my global mentoring team for the work I do in health? Because I've explored in so many different sectors, because I was trying to focus on leadership processes and deep personal commitments, as opposed to say, I'm going to work in the energy sector, or I'm going to work in IT, or I'm going to work in nonprofits. I've been working across them. And, but how would I say? A few years ago, the med school at U of T asked me to do a test program on Renaissance leadership. And it taught me a lot about how bright the people were that signed up for that course. I mean, they had knowledge and insights technically way beyond what I had. What I found out is that they were almost totally unskilled in terms of relationship building in the community that they would absolutely need to have if they were going to accomplish their goals, because every one of them had identified that they didn't want to be just a researcher. They wanted to build something, either build a special team or a special unit in a hospital or a company that would deal with healthcare. And then when they were introducing me to the students, the young grad student who was managing the course said, Don's got a lot of experience around the world. And he sensed that I was a traditional management developer and said, but he doesn't have much experience in healthcare. But I think some of his lessons from the other sectors would be useful. And I didn't say anything to him at the time, but I went home that night and said, what sector have I spent the most time in my 70 years? And I ended up deciding it was in health and wellness. So in my writing of logbooks, I took time to write one logbook on what I had done to mentor people in health and wellness. And so if I were meeting with any of you in a follow-up, I would be very interested to say, like, who wants to explore this with me? And it goes back to early days. My early days working with Jack Sibley from Hamilton, and we were involved in transforming all the church-run hospitals across Africa as decolonization took place. And I was getting used to health problems when, a small amount of money for some penicillin or another drug would solve these children's problems, and that there was just no system to deliver it. And then, so I draw your attention to something like that, and what it's filled with is filled with stories of people who would not necessarily have called themselves heroes, but to me are heroic. And so I have written a fair amount about what I learned from general history when I studied Thomas Carlyle on his view of heroes, or Joseph Campbell on, the hero with 1,000 faces. And I see from your reactions, some of you know Joseph Campbell, an amazingly articulate guy who helps us understand the importance of myths. And although myths are not absolutely true, how important they are to plotting a life of success. So I guess my whole search for creating a program of modern day Renaissance leadership was to encourage people to listen to that story in their mind. Create your own myth about who you're going to be and how you're going to function. Nurture your curiosity. Back it with courage. Strengthen it with collaboration. And so I could go on, because this explorer my artist friends have got me telling the stories that I've been sailing the seven seas. And so I would invite you to consider which of the seas you want to sail on as explorers. Is it the sea of curiosity? Is it the sea of courage? Is it creativity, competence, compassion? But that doesn't have to distract you from any of the busyness that is so important and part of your everyday. But it may lighten the burden of those assignments, particularly if you get really effective at building your global mentoring team and connecting with others and accepting that collaboration, in my mind, collaboration is no longer just a nice idea to be practiced when it's convenient. Collaboration, in my mind, has become the DNA of the global knowledge economy. I don't know whether that's too highfalutin, but it is the best I could say at the moment of the journey that I've been on. And of course, I've ended up having so many wonderful mentors that just add such joy to one's life.
So I'm going to ask just one more question, and then we'll open it up. And I do want to acknowledge, last year, Don received the Order of Canada, one of the highest awards and recognition. So I think it's been a real honor for Don personally and for everyone else working with him and for Canada. You've accomplished so much. When I see you're always going, you're always energy. And what do you do on the personal side? What do you do for fun? What do you do to put fuel back in your tank so that you're not out with all of us? You're just, he's the coach, go, inspiring. So how you 7 years in this game, and I want to get some of it. So what do you do for fun, and how do you, in your quiet times, how do you fill up your tank?
Well, I just spent the last 2 weeks with my network based in BC. Hadn't been back with them physically in contact for a while, although we're still always doing things together. So I left minus 11 degrees here, got off at the other end, 14 above, started having lovely walks along the ocean, watching my friends swim last week in the ocean. Then I went up to Gabriola Island, where we have a network member who's an amazingly successful business developer who has unleashed innovations all over the world. And he's now set up a really amazing communication center on tiny Gabriola Island and does all his mentoring internationally from Gabriola. His wife is a horse whisperer, so we go spend some time at the stables. And then when you say goodbye to them, I go back to my friend in Victoria, Keith Jones, whom you know well, who did a map for your journey here in York region. And I had a birthday party, and Harvey knows that I decided I had a big birthday party to bring my network together at age 70, and that was fun. And then at age 80, I took over the Jazz Bistro in downtown Toronto, and we had a great weekend party, and people came from everywhere. And then this year, since I was born on Friday, July the 13th, I said, I can't have a birthday party because my grandson's getting married that week in Edmonton. And then I thought, oh, I can still have a birthday party. So I decided early on I would have a year-long birthday party. So I flew to Nairobi. My second home is Kenya. I've been going to Kenya every year since before independence. So it is my second home. And when I'm speaking with young leaders there, I know things about their country that they don't know, having lived as long as I have. So kind of arrogant to say to your friends, well, you've been wondering when I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back April 1st, and I want a birthday party. And I thought it might be, well, we'll just get 8 or 10 and we'll go out for dinner. Instead, 3 women went very seriously and organized a birthday party for about 70 people. And what happened was they started saying, so who in the group knows Don the longest? And what were you doing? So a former minister puts up his hand and says, well, I think I'm that guy. I started working with him in 1960s, just after independence. And then he tells his story. And the young people who were at the party said later, that story from that elderly Kenyan was really important for them, remembering what their country had come through. And what happened was the friends of mine at the party, Harvey, it was like 3 main groups. They knew each other in their group, but they didn't know the other 2 groups. And I was the only one that knew everybody at the party. And you could see them as people are coming into the party saying, that's the Minister of Health. Why is he coming to Don's party? And then when Mama Ngina came through the door, Mama, the widow of the first president of the country, you could see the young people like, why would Mama Ngina be coming to Don's birthday party? But what I loved about it was everybody, in starting to tell their story about me, got a chance to tell their story to the other Kenyans that didn't know them. And it just made me feel that maybe I had stumbled across something by pushing for a birthday party, because I wanted to go back to all the places in the world where I had been received so well and thank those people for helping to give me such a good life. And then tell them that, hey, I spent the last 15 years documenting everything that we did, and most of you are in here somewhere. So if you want this stuff, follow our motto. If you follow our values and our intentions, then you're invited to SWG, Steel with Glee. And so I have been continuing to have birthdays. So every couple of weeks, wherever I go, I have a birthday.
Fine.
What more fun could one expect at this stage of life?
Fantastic. Yeah. So I think it's time now to open up. Particularly interested with the 8 our great students in our first cohort in our PhD doctoral program in global health, but then we have other guests as well. But let's engage with Dawn. If you just want to say your name first, maybe just a couple words about your background. So open up to talk with Dawn.
You know, I need feedback now, because I need to know, is any of this making any sense to you? Is it even enjoyable to you? Come on, talk, please.
Thank you for your thoughts. I really resonated with what you're saying. So hope that is helpful in terms of so my name is Riksha. I'm one of the doctoral students in the School of Health. My background is interesting because it doesn't well, it aligns with football, but it comes at it from a different way. So I did my original bachelor's degree in psychology, and then I did a design degree, design education grad, and then I did my master of design. And my work specifically focuses on people living with dementia and
People
living with dementia and activity engagement, using technology to facilitate engagement in teams. So my question was, in my career, and I was talking with Luca about this at lunch, I've never really planned well, and things that I've planned have not gone according to plan. Like we're talking about how I never, how I never planned on going to grad school, and I kind of just kind of took as a chance because a teacher in my undergrad recommended that grad school would be a good option for me, and I sort of followed that advice. And when I was doing my master's, someone recommended to me pursuing doctoral education would probably be a good idea for me. So I followed that advice again. I'm happy now. But I was just wondering, how do you sort of navigate those sort of, I don't know, lapses in the things that you.
So I thank you for the question. I have said quickly that the story of my life, remember, I'm just at my 90s, I've had some time to reflect, and writing the logbooks gave me time to reflect on what you were busy doing for years. And I couldn't have explained. I mean, I know that my family and friends and some of my colleagues and clients at different times, why is he doing so many different things? What's the purpose? I couldn't have been clear in giving an answer, but the answer has become clear. And that's what I'm writing about and talking now. So I was a happy high school teacher, a happy high school student, but a mediocre student. Nobody in my teens would ever have expected me to go to university. And remember, it's after World War II, everything's booming. I had no models to point to higher education. I have fun. I love dancing. I played a lot of sports, enjoyed good dates. Now I'll go. My model was to go into a big factory that was paying big money. And then I got a challenge my last year, and I didn't think much of it. But people on reflecting saying, you answered that challenge? Because the challenge was our school was too crowded in this low-income community, and they wanted a few of us to move to a brand new school nearby. You know, in your teens, how rough it is to, am I welcomed? Have I found my place? Am I comfortable? I was a successful athlete. I was a good dancer. I had lots of fun. And somebody says, yeah, but do you mind going to another school somewhere else for your last year? And my reaction was, sounds interesting. So I grabbed the opportunity, and I found myself in an upper middle class community, very different, with everybody sitting talking about, so where are you going next? And I didn't even know what the question meant. And of course, they're saying, are you going to go to Queens, or are you going to go to, and I got to university because my athletic ability got on display at that school. And suddenly I'm at a university, absolutely certain that I didn't belong there. So except for my athletics at the university, I have no big breakthrough idea. I moved through, I started in business, didn't like the ethics I was being taught, so I went to pre-med. I passed pre-med, surprised myself, and then didn't have any money to go on. And I went and tried teaching. And there was so much desperation because remember, Depression, World War II, we hadn't built a new classroom in this province for 40 years. And now suddenly babies were being born again and the classes were filling up. So if you got top references, you could go and get trained for 6 weeks. So that's what I did. I came to Jarvis Collegiate for a summer school of 6 weeks and found myself in high school teaching half-day science, half-day history. An unusual combination, but fun. And I'm 2 to 3 years older than the people I'm teaching with no real preparation. And in my second year at that school, 12 students changed my life and put me on a pattern that I would say influenced everything I've done since then. These 12 students decided they wanted to do something, some social action to prove to their parents, their colleagues, their teachers, that they were interested in something beyond themselves. And they invited me to come and help them figure out what project could we do and would I help them get it implemented. I was honored to be invited, and I guess I got invited because I was the only young teacher in the school. I was the first new teacher the school had had in 25 years before the explosion happened in this province. And I was football and basketball coach, so you got to know them in a different way. And I sang in the Glee Club, and I directed their Gilbert and Sullivan operettas. So anyway, they invited me in. I had no idea. I had no big purpose in life. And a few weeks later, I was walking by my church, United Church, and there was a sign that said, "The winds of change in Africa." And I went in and listened to a young journalist telling the story. He had been to Ghana. Ghana was the first sub-Saharan country to be decolonized in 1957. And he went to 5 other countries, and his story was, they're all going to be free by 63, and they're all needing leaders because they don't have many locally trained leaders. So I went back to the students and said, maybe we should bring one student on a scholarship. And they agreed, and they became very efficient fundraisers and very good at getting others in the community to join them. So to leap ahead, within 3 years, we had created a national foundation. We were airlifting African students here in the 1960s. We learned that there was a group in New York that was doing the same kind of thing, but with much more power, because Black leaders in New York saw the decolonization in Africa was part of the same battle that they were about to start in the States, because remember, the 60s was the start of the big civil rights movement. So we were partnering with these people, and who were these people? One was Jackie Robinson, first Black baseball player. Second one was Sidney Poitier, first Black man to win an Academy Award. The third was A. Philip Randolph, the head of the biggest Black union in the States, the Pullman Porters Union. And the last was Harry Belafonte, the first artist to sell 1 million records. Pretty heady stuff for a 23-year-old high school teacher interacting with those kind of people. And attracting new important leaders in our country, that was the 60s. And to me, the 60s was an era where Canada was starting to mature as a nation. So to me, my logbooks are really a story about our country starting to grow up. And the story is about a few of us that were growing up as our country grew up. Because what happened in that period was, for the first time, we started moving away from just looking at our roots in Europe. And we started building connections with other parts of the world in the 60s. And then we found suddenly that immigrants started to come from those other countries rather than from the traditional places in Europe. And when those immigrants came, they pushed a sensitivity at us about our own First Nations and about almost invisible Black population in the 60s. And yet it was a Black population that had been here for over 400 years. And most of us knew nothing about it. So that kind of project by those students, then we had the problem, how do I find a student? So I ended up connecting with a civil rights pastor from New York when he happened to come to preach at our church, James Robinson. Guy came out of the slums of the bottoms of Tennessee and rose to be head of his class at Union Theological Seminary, and a noted civil rights driver in New York. He created the first interracial hospital. He put together multiracial programs for kids. But he created a first program to take young Americans on short experiences into rural Africa called Crossroads Africa. So he found us our first student and then asked me, so why don't you come with me to Africa? And first of all, I said, I'm just married. I got new professional responsibilities. It's exciting, but scary. Back then, may sound silly, but the idea of going to Africa was like going to the moon or Mars. It was not in anybody's thinking. So I thought that has passed. And then I found myself at a layman's conference in Muskoka, where the same Dr. Robinson was the keynote speaker. And I got locked away for a weekend in beautiful Muskoka with this man. And when he talked, he knew how to tell stories. And I was hooked. And so at the end of that meeting, I and a few other guys took up a collection to help his work. We collected $5,000. My annual salary then was $3,100 a year. So $5,000 was a big amount. And he took it and said, if you like what I'm doing, why don't you start it yourself? And he gave us back our $5,000. So suddenly now we were creating another organization that we had no plans to do. I could go on, but it's an extended answer to your question. But all these events, it's when the door opens for you, do you have the courage to walk through?
And I like the metaphor, when the fog lifts, do you have a vision, plan to go forward? Okay, other questions?
I think there's one online.
We'll take an online question. Then we'll come back to the room.
Hello.
Go ahead, Michael.
Yes, I'm here. I'm seeing that the host spotlighted your video. Okay, I don't know what to do with this. Anyway, I will make 4 comments and then I have a question. The first is that my name is Michael. I'm a student there and I'm currently in Berlin. And it was inspiring to hear your comments, experiences here in Berlin. And so I will be returning soon. And if there's anything you would like from Berlin, memorabilia, I would be delighted to bring it for you. And that is a bribery for telling, which is my next comment, that I should be looking you up pretty soon and expect to be having regular coffee conversations with you. And that leads on to the third comment, which is that I think whose ever idea or the people responsible for your coming to us to talk to us today, I would like to say to them that this is one of the most inspiring and useful seminar session that we've had, and I'm very, very, very happy to have been a part of it. My question now relates to a comment that you made earlier on about myths, the importance of building your own personal myth as relevant to your success. And I'm interested in knowing what sort of myths that you've built about yourself in your career. And sorry?
Sorry, I was just repeating your question.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
right.
I got the question now.
Right. And related to that, you talked about the 7 C's. And obviously, seas can be calm and stormy. And so I would like to hear what which of these seas you've sailed on, and when the storms were rough, how you sailed through. Thank you.
Thank you for your very positive comments. What myth do I see of myself? I did say that I see myself as an explorer and playing the role of being a great global connector, because I think a critical skill in today's world is relationship building. And I got early opportunities to stumble through and learn some skills about relationship building across the cultures. And I picture myself as somebody driven when somebody I admire gives me a challenge. I feel suddenly very passionately committed. What can I do to respond to that challenge? So I took perhaps too long to talk about those 12 students and everything I did about getting to know the Africa immigrants in this country. The diaspora came from those students. And my first involvement with indigenous people came from those African students. The first group of African students asked me, when I said I wanted to show them my community, they said, "We'd like to see an Indian reservation." And I guess my face fell. And they said, "Oh, is there something wrong?" I said, "I don't know, but I don't know how you visit an Indian reservation. I don't even know where they are." And so I started in my own ignorance saying, well, let me find out. And in London, Ontario, I found there was an Indian agent. I had to make my case to that Indian agent to let us go visit an Indian reservation that was 40 minutes away from my home. And the wonderful thing for me was I got opportunities to go, a group of Africans and myself in mutual ignorance, going to a reservation to get introduced to indigenous people. And we were directed to go to the principal of the school. And who did that principal turn out to be? A Black immigrant from Jamaica who was going to introduce a group of Africans and me to a community in Canada. So I've had a number of those kind of experiences that keep building on the myth that somehow I can feel at home in new places. And I learned that if you stop trying to control things and you did things on your own, people then would relax and welcome you. So I keep giving advice to bureaucrats who are trying to build relations. Don't invite the people you're trying to work with into your big boardrooms. Go yourself to their community. If I can go one last quick collection, when people say to me, what are the things that really convinced you that you should work at putting a network together to try to help leaders learn how to transform their organization? I had 4 things happen to me in less than 2 years. 1989, I was in China helping to build the first Western-style business school in China, and being introduced to the start of those export villages that they were starting to build, that they claimed they would quickly be exporting all over the world. And we thought they were dreaming. I thought it would take 60 or 70 years. They said it would take 12. It took 15. And they changed the world. But I also was there watching the corruption from running a market economy against a free economy at the same time. And when the students rallied against that corruption, that led to Tiananmen Square. And I went from China and Tiananmen Square to working in Berlin. And I was working in Koblenz at one of the private business schools. And my job there was to teach Germans leaders to negotiate with Japanese, which was a lovely cross-cultural challenge.
I imagine.
So I was in Berlin when the wall came down. And I watched overnight people's lives changing. And then I went from there to East Africa, to Kenya, and was there when Nelson Mandela was suddenly let out of prison. And my Kenyan friend said, the release of Mandela has the potential to have as much impact across Africa as the Berlin Wall fall was having across Europe. And then in the fall of that same year, 1990, I was back in Bonn with 60,000 Germans celebrating the unification of East and West Germany, that all the wise analysts said would take a generation, and it happened in 1 year. Those 4 events happening in such a short time convinced me that we were living in a world where the incredible had become the inevitable. And that's what led me to take the challenge at the Banff Center to create a new style leadership that would be built on the skills of the artists and would be of relevance to every sector, not just business, and would be at high enough quality that it could attract global interest. And with no development money, that's the crazy challenge that I took on in 1990. And it occupied the next 25 years of my life. And 2 years ago, when finishing the logbooks, telling the story of that journey, I realized I had finally accomplished the task that I took on in 1990. And my only sadness was of the 10 mentors that had challenged me to take on the task, none of them were still alive. So I couldn't go back and say, mission accomplished. I just had to have a drink by myself and celebrate. But that's my myth. How did I do?
Excellent.
Excellent, thank you. So, question.
One of the things you started off by talking about was the challenge of storytelling. And what I wanted to ask is, in a PhD program in academia, we're constantly told to be more direct, to have a point, to reduce what we're doing down to information sharing, despite the fact that we're also still supposed to be very engaging with our research. So what I wanted to ask was, in your writings or in your presentations, how do you approach the difference between informing and storytelling?
So I have always said to people who were pushing me to write that I was not a writer. I was perhaps a decent chronicler, somebody who could capture the stories of important events so that they were there not to be forgotten. And when I used to say I'm not a writer, one of my clients, when we were having a board meeting, he kept saying, but you're writing all the time. And then his partner said, yeah, but I've figured out Don writes when he knows that one of us needs something written in order to solve our problem. And he was helping me understand what drives me. In other words, I have a couple of colleagues who write all the time. They live to write. They can't be happy if they're not writing. I am not a writer like that. But when you need something from me in detail to solve your big problem, then I will write like crazy. So it took a long time for me to get to the point of believing that chronicling the whole story of this journey that started in 1990 to really build a leadership program that allowed people to deal with complex tasks was necessary. COVID almost destroyed me because I realized I live to interact with people, and to be suddenly isolated by myself, because my wife was now in a old people's home, losing most of her memory. So I was living alone. My sister, who was so close to me, had just died, and my daughter died of a heart attack. So it was tough, but it gave me the time to sit and do all the documentation. And then the question became, what am I doing this for? Like, does anybody care? Will anybody read it? And I had no idea. And I came after COVID slowly back here to reconnect with Harvey. The first guy I showed it to was James, because I had been working with James since he was a med student. And he looked at the first bits that I wrote and said, you're just telling the top of the mountains. You got to go back and write more. So I kept writing, and I ended up writing 4,000 pages. Now the question was, how do you give people access to? So not sure whether I'm staying directly on your bit, but it's why I'm saying I think I have found my life's purpose. which is now not to be a further chronicler or writer, but to be a storyteller that gets people a chance to access this. And so I've been positioning myself for the last couple of months that I'm a student again. And my time on the West Coast was with two people, one an Indigenous storyteller and one a former Stratford actor. And they are going to try to whip me into shape as being a storyteller. But remember, storytelling is different than speech making or reporting, like you're talking about. We know from brain research that people remember more from stories than they do from your report on your facts. And so, how do you get skilled? To me, this little test today is my first formal role in my new role as storyteller. So you will tell me later what kind of grade you give me, because I think I'm at the starting of my next 10 years.
Kindergarten.
Hopefully that helps.
And my answer to the question, my favorite quotations, Muriel Rukeyser, an American activist. She says, the universe is made of stories, not atoms. So we get into that metaphor. And we learn, we live, we communicate by stories, and Don is master storyteller. We have time for one or maybe two more questions. Just looking around. Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for your thoughts and your storytelling. My name is Latika. I'm a PhD student in the Global Health Program. My background's in public health, but the last 10 years I've spent working in global health research and managing the operations of a research lab. And I think some of the things that you've said have really resonated with me, especially the relationship building. One of the things that we say being in the lab is that we like to work with nice people. And so that's kind of how we built up the lab. And I find that over the last 10 years, a lot of our success has been because of the people that we've brought on to work with. And so that's really important. One of the things that I wanted to ask you was about working with a lot of young leaders. I suspect that they've come to you when they've had failures. And I wanted to hear from you what your advice has been around failure and how to kind of pick themselves back up and go back up there.
Well, one of the excerpts in the logbooks is based on learning from failures. Because so I've spent time documenting some glorious failures and then trying to figure out. And when you really look at the world of failures, you know that most of the great people who have accomplished things have their litany of failures that went long before they had any of their successes. So you find yourself with little bromides, but you know it's a kernel of real truth when you say, well, the last time you can fail is the last time you're going to try, because Edison wrote that powerful thing about how he was documenting 90-something failures before he had his breakthrough with electricity, you know, and he gets remembered for this success. But the other thing that I guess is woven through my myth about myself is a belief that humor is critical. And so I write about saying there is a sense, if you're trying to bring about transformation, and I guess in case I haven't made clear, the focal point of all of the work I've done since 1990 is to prepare people to do transformational leadership, not just small changes. because what I found, I went across the country and interviewed 30 heads of all kinds of organizations. They all thought that their problem was unique. And I was recognizing patterns and saying 80% about what they're talking is the same across. So I have to let them believe that their problem is unique and look for that 10 to 15% difference that I could inject. And so it can often be done with humor. And so I did bring a little piece that comes out of one of my logbooks that perhaps best reflects the way in which we have used humor. And it's something that I picked up 60 years ago from a writer called Harvey Mindless. And he was talking about how he used humor to keep himself going through his battle with cancer. And he taught me the extent to which our distinctive humor can help us to maintain our sanity in the midst of chaotic changes and failures. And that humor has to move beyond mere jokes and just being sharp-witted. Indeed, it can move beyond laughter itself. It involves a whole frame of mind, a whole point of view about life. So then let me read his list of the activities that characterize this kind of frame of life. He says his approach to humor demands flexibility, our willingness to examine every side of every issue and every side to every side. Spontaneity, the ability to leap from one mood or mode of thinking to the other quickly. Unconventionality, to be free of any rigid attachment that this is the one certain way to move. If you saw that movie Conclave, you saw the guy Ralph Fiennes saying, certainty is the enemy of unity. Some powerful thoughts about the difference between dealing with divergent problems or convergent problems. And when you're dealing with divergent problems, certainty is not the good path to go. Shrewdness, a refusal to be free of any rigid attachment and to believe that anyone, least of all yourself, is entirely what you seem to be. Playfulness, an ability to grasp life as a game, a tragic comic game, but a game that nobody wins, but you don't have to win it to enjoy it. And lastly, humility. And he talks about the humility, that elusive quality exemplified by the rabbi in a well-known traditional Jewish story called Life is a River. In Life is a River, the lead rabbi in the group is lying dying, and then all the other rabbis are lined up in order of priority, waiting to hear his last words. And the second in command leans over to catch the rabbi's last words. And the rabbi says, "Life is a river." Life is a river. The rabbi says, "Life is a river." Rabbi says, "Life is a river." Pass it down. The rabbi says, "Life is a river." It goes all the way down the line till it gets to the newest novitiate who's just joined and hasn't got into the scene of how this culture works. And he hears the words and he says, what does the rabbi mean, life is a river? What does the rabbi mean, life is a river? What does the rabbi mean, life is a river? Goes back up the line, comes back, and the guy next to the rabbi nervously leans over and says, Rabbi, what did you mean, life is a river? And with the last croak, the rabbi says, so it's not a river. That's what Mindless is saying. That kind of humor will get you through many failures. And so having a sense of the importance of having a sense of humor is probably fundamental.
I think might be a good time to wrap up. Our goal was to have an inspiring conversation, and I really think we've accomplished it with Don. And Don's probably the easiest person to interview because all I do is ask a question and it goes, right? And it's marvelous. So I think to be able to come and share your 70 years and youth as you're moving forward, it's just so inspirational how we deal with adversity. And I mean, one of my favorite sports is basketball. Even the top players run, misses more than sinks in, right? But until they stop shooting, right? Keep trying. Learn from it and make an adjustment. You don't keep doing the same thing over and over. You've got this, 14 volumes?
Yeah.
It's marvelous. I want to leave with a request or a challenge. John, as part of your process, they developed a challenge dialogue system. It's a really nice structured process if you have a challenge, how to work through that. I used it several times when I was the dean, working through challenges building our new faculty health. I just got raised with a challenge. I think you need to do a prologue, addendum, a new chapter, maybe coming back here, interacting with incredible students. And this chapter, this prologue, what is the message you give to our youth today? And a lot of that you expressed through the conversation. I would love to see that additional chapter as a challenge to
Okay. Well, when you pick up something like this, and I say that I'm sitting with 5,000 pages, I want you to know that I've been asking for years, Canadians, where was artificial intelligence created? How many of you know where?
UT.
Yeah, but for 10 years, I never got the correct answer until the guy that was brought in years ago from England to be the young student to take over the program got the Nobel Prize. So now more Canadians know that it was started. When they say U of T, it was not part of the official university. It was a special kind of open university that one of the doctors in our network from McMaster that had already been part of a miraculous breakthrough in medical education. He was doing research on neural pathways and got thinking, wonder if you could teach a machine to work like this brain. And that was the roots of what started artificial intelligence. So our team has been involved with artificial intelligence at all stages, and we know there are problems that can come from it, and most of those problems are above my pay grade. It's going to require government regulation. But meanwhile, we are pioneering the use of it. So you can interrogate all my logbooks now with AI. and you can ask questions and it will tell you. And the latest program that just blew my mind a month ago, Google's new notebook. We put in my travel guide, which is only, this is my short version introduction to the Renaissance way. We put that in and then asked them to have a conversation. And in 6 minutes, it creates a dialogue with two people who are not real people. They're avatars. And they're having this intelligent conversation about me, about my Renaissance way, about my logbooks, about CDS. And I say to people, why would I ever do podcasts now? This is way more powerful than me doing a podcast. And when I listen for the errors, this woman is talking like she's read everything that I've written. So if you're not making intelligent use of artificial intelligence, I'd love to spend some time to show you how much you could benefit and save time for yourself. And I want to leave the kind of challenge that Harvey's leaving. You know, I asked you, have you done anything to work on your story and who you want to be and how you want to be seen by others? I would love to challenge you to take even 10 minutes before the end of today and write yourself a little note. What of any importance did I learn today? And secondly, what am I going to do in reaction to learning that? And I would invite you to take that little card, keep it personal, but pick somebody that you trust and give it to them and ask them to hold you to that. You tell yourself, in the next 3 months, I'm going to do this as a result of today. Please push me not to be a failure, but actually keep at it. And I'm inviting you to commit to be a rationally informed optimist. I'm inviting you to consider taking steps to become a modern day Renaissance leader. And there's no big system. There's no big test to get in. If you agree with our value statements and our intentions, you're part of the movement. And you can use it to concentrate on being a better student, a better partner with somebody, a better leader of some group. You don't have to get into complicated new organizations. But I think the essence of the Renaissance way could add some real value to others and to yourself and to your happiness. So in return, I'm saying I am available for anybody who wants to take that seriously. And I'm going to keep learning how to be a better storyteller and would love an opportunity to try again. And if you think it sounds crazy for a guy at age 90 to be talking about the next 10 years work that I'm planning to do now that I know what my real life's work is supposed to be.
Finally figured it out.
Pardon?
Finally figured it out.
Finally figured it out. So, of course, my program started at the Banff Center where I was surrounded by artists. And of course, the Renaissance in Europe was created by artists. So part of my passion, I have a group of Renaissance artistic instigators that are part of the driving force of our movement. So I want to close, if I may, with some more music. And it's by one of my favorite singers, Frank Sinatra, whom I first saw at the Toronto Expedition with Tommy Dorsey's band when he was a scrawny little teenager, and none of us knew who this guy Sinatra was or what he was going to become. And you perhaps remember this song of his. I'm going to live till I die. I'm going to laugh instead of cry. I'm going to take the town and turn it upside down. I'm going to live until I die. They're going to say, what a guy. I'm going to play to the sky. Ain't going to miss a thing. I'm going to have my fling. I'm going to live until I die. The blues are going to lay low. I'll make them stay low. They'll never trail over my head. I'll be a devil till I'm an angel. But until then, hallelujah, gonna dance, gonna fly. I'll take a chance, flying high. Until my number's up, I'm gonna fill my cup. I'm gonna live until I die. Thank you.
We'll do Frank Sinatra.
A dreamer I am.
Dreamer you are. Anyway, thank you everybody for joining us. And I hope it's a very special, it's a treat for me to help organize this. And as you see,
Thank you for making it happen.
Don's my coach. We all need coaches in life. That's, I think, a wisdom. And he's here, he's available for you. He's invitations. I'm also around. Hang around the dog. You see me here once a month. Along with Susan, you're co-leading our wellness impact. And you want to everybody, you going to say final word, Mary? Or?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Dawn and Harvey. I think it's incredibly inspirational, Dawn, and I think we've all learned so much from you. And Harvey, thank you so much for suggesting and asking some of the probing questions. And well, it's the beginning of all of our expeditions. So thank you so much for
Thank you for welcoming me.
All right.